can't effectively move forward without looking back. And today we're spending some time talking about what we've learned. We're looking back over the last 72 days, 73 today, and seeing what we've learned. Because if we can look back, if we can learn from what we've done, we can make some changes, we can make some pivots, and we can set ourselves up for consistency. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Welcome back to my 100-day walk to consistency. We are on day number 73. That's right. We are moving, we are changing, we are growing, we're developing, and we're getting a better version of ourselves. Hey, each day that you show up, each day that you're here, each day that you commit, you're adding another piece to the puzzle of being consistent, of being self-confident, of being strong, and of being successful. I'll see you on the walk as we dive into this topic for today. So today we're talking about reflection. How does reflection set us up for success, and how does it set us up for consistency? Because the truth is that growth happens when you're able to look back and you're able to see those places that you've succeeded, those places you may have to make some adjustments, and those places that may need to be removed. Often when we talk about looking back, we look back with this concept of regret. And we're not looking back to regret. We're looking back for education, we're looking back for learning. Because those things that we have done so far over the last 72 days have caused us to grow. They've caused us to change. They've caused us to have to think about some things in our lives and some things that we may have done or not done that we need to be more conscious of, right? So our goal as we're looking back is to be intentional about what we're doing, intentional about what we are seeing, and intentional about the lessons that we are learning in our ability to be successful. So why is reflection essential for growth? Well, it's essential for growth because you can't improve what you're doing if you don't evaluate. When I do my fasting, and I think I mentioned last episode that we do a 72-hour fast once a week. We do a fast once a week, usually 72 hours. But when we do the fast, I often will look back and talk about how I'm doing physically, mentally, and emotionally. Those are three of the most powerful and most important domains of health. And so looking back over that time, my goal is to see, well, what has worked? What has my body been telling me? Have there been places where I need to have listened? Were there places I need to have adjusted? And how do I set myself up for the best possibility of maintaining success and moving forward into a space that keeps me going, and gives me the best possibility of success? So reflection is very important because you learn. And as we mentioned several times over the last couple of days, if you are not succeeding, and I'm going to use the word fail, if you failed, we're going to rephrase that, right? We're going to say we have not failed, but we are either succeeding or we're learning. Either you've accomplished what you said you're going to accomplish, or you're learning from it. And so our goal is to look back and see where we need to make changes or where we need to continue. When I was just starting our practice, we had been practicing for maybe, 4 years. We found ourselves in an interesting situation. We were seeing patients and we were growing, we were building, but we were so busy working that we didn't take time to look back and see, well, what is the function of the practice? What is the goal of the practice? And I think I mentioned to you that we, at that time, came up with our practice mission statement and our goal and our core values. And that was very important because it allowed us then, as we talked about clarity in our last episode, it allowed us then to be clear about who we are and how we function and what are the things that we were going to do in our practice to be successful and to have the best benefits for our patients. And so looking back is very important. Often we don't do that because we think it's a waste of time. We think we got it all, we've planned. And of course, if we planned, everything should be going according to plan. But as you know, and as I can attest, We can plan, but things don't always go according to our plan. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to reflect and look back. If you don't take time to reflect, you might repeat mistakes that are compounded. So you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you could be making a mistake, making more mistakes. If you look back and you reflect and you say, okay, well, this thing right here doesn't work quite well. Maybe I find a more efficient way of doing it. Or maybe I correct it. Or maybe I didn't even realize there was an issue going on. One of the things that happened to us, that has happened to us is, we come up with procedures and policies. And over time, those policies are just implemented. And I remember there was one time when one of our team members moved away who was responsible for a particular thing. And when they left, then we realized that the policy had not been working and they were compensating for that. So they were fixing the problem, right? But the policy that we had in place was not working. And so we had to go back and look at that policy and then change it to say we don't want our team members to spend extra time trying to fix things, right? Because something isn't working. We want to have the process working as we designed it. And then, of course, we can go back and change the policy. We can go back and adjust the procedures for the policy. But that allows us, when we're reflecting, to be able to look at these things and see where we can make the best benefit. All right. So key point that I want you to get here is that reflection isn't about looking back with regret. That's actually one of the big ones. Because often we think that. We're like, oh, I'm going to look back and I'm going to regret the things that I've done, or I haven't made this particular thing, I haven't been successful. And so we often think that's the function of reflection. And it is not the function of reflection. It is for us to look back and say, how do we change, how do we improve, and how do we keep growing? So what are the 3 areas that we want to reflect in, right? And this goes back to our domains of health, you'll see. So one is, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about yourself in the process? So we've been at this now for 73 days. And as you have been moving through this space, as you've been walking, as you've been listening, as you've been exercising, as you've been yogaing and stretching and all the things that you do, what have you learned about yourself? So the journey isn't about the actions, right? It's not about the actions. It's about self-discovery. And often we miss that point, that our journey in our lives is really a journey of self-discovery. So all the things that go on, it is how do we interact with the world? What is our space? What is our place in the world? And that is the journey that we find ourselves on. So what is your lesson that you've learned about who you are? What habits have you built? We've been talking about being consistent. We've been talking about rhythm, alignment, and structure, which are the bedrock for success. What habits have you learned? What things have you put in place? What things have you had in your lives that you look at now and you say, I don't know that that's serving me. I don't know that that's aligned with what I say I want to do. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But does it take me in the direction that I want to go? Is it giving me focus? Is it giving me direction? And is it giving me energy? So what habits are those? What are the habits that you've learned? What challenges have you overcome? This is huge. One of my challenges that I've overcome is the challenge of scheduling, right? So I've had to make some adjustment in how I do things so that I can be present, so that I can be consistent. When we have had bad weather, you guys saw that a couple of times we were on the elliptical. And there were a couple of times, frankly, I just had to go out because the elliptical started giving me some issues, right? Which is why on some of these cold days, I have not been on the elliptical because, I'm not sure what's going on with it, but it wasn't behaving. So, so what challenges have you had to overcome? Now, I want you to pause here for a minute, right? I want to put a pin. And I want to help you understand that those challenges that you overcame, those were celebration points. Come on, come on. Right? We talk about celebrating the things, we're celebrating the wins, right? So we have these milestones that we've created and we go through and we are celebrating them. We're happy and we give ourselves props for those. But there were some challenges that you overcame that you didn't think were celebration points, but they were, because guess what? You overcame them. You pivoted, you restructured, you replanned, you reset your goals, you retooled, whatever it was that you had to do, you did that and you overcame that challenge. So that right there is a point of celebration. Often we don't see those. You're like, oh man, I had this problem. And here's the thing, sometimes the problems that you have are, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, most of the time the problems we have are not unique to us. And so there are people that are experiencing those exact same things, and we think it's just us, and so we try to hide those things, when in actuality, sharing those things are a huge benefit, not just to you, but also to those people that are hearing. Okay, so what habits or what challenges have you overcome? And what has surprised you? This is a good one. When I'm in my office and we start people on various medications or various treatment protocols, when they come back, I ask them, I said, what have you learned? Right? What have you learned about yourself, about blood sugars, about how your body behaves? And what has surprised you the most? Because often people think I'm going to ask them, oh, what problem did you have? Like, yeah, that's not really where I want to go. I want to know, well, what have you learned and what has surprised you the most? And I'll tell you, one of the things that has surprised me the most about this 100-day walk to consistency is the comments that I've gotten about various walks, various talks. Now, all of these are keystone principles, and so they are the basis for so much that we do. But to hear someone say that, okay, this one really touched me, or this was right on point today, this was just exactly what I needed to hear. And then the other thing was, there were some days, and I think I mentioned this to you, that there were some days that it was cold and I wasn't feeling well, my voice was gone, and I'm like, okay, do I need to go out there and walk today? And do you know that morning someone sent a message that said, oh, I'm really excited about this. Thank you for consistency. Thank you for whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, somebody's out there, and they are getting benefit. And so that pushed me forward. And so you think that I was here encouraging you, which is I love to do, but you guys are encouraging me as well, because I get to hear, I get to see. So that was something that surprised me. And then the other thing that surprised me was how, I was gonna say easy, but how much my life worked once I was able to put into place and begin working on this consistency. That was a surprise to me. I expected it, but when it happened, I'm like, okay, yeah, there it is. And I'm in my neighborhood walking. Let me see if I can show you. I don't think we've been down this way in quite some time, but there it is. That's the pond in the back of our complex. Okay, so what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about yourself? The next thing is what works and what's not working. What's working and what's not working. Why is that important? Because right now there's some things that you just continue to do just because. It's a habit. It's what you've done. It feels comfortable. And you have not taken the time to look back and say, okay, are the things I'm doing working? Is the rowing my thing? Is the swimming my thing? Is the walking my thing? Is 6 o'clock in the morning my thing? Right? But you do it and it causes some dissonance. It causes some friction in your life and your thoughts and your attitudes. And because of that, things seem to be harder to accomplish. Yep. So what's working? What are those things that you say, okay, yeah, this is good. I'm increasing, I'm leaving that in. I may need to refine it. I may need to adjust it a little bit. I may need to tweak it a little bit, but for the most part, it is the thing that's working for me. So what is that thing? How do I enhance it? How do I keep it going? And then what are those things that are not quite where I want them to be? And how do I get rid of those? What do I need to replace it with? What do I need to adjust in the process of doing that? Right, so what am I learning, or what have I learned? What's working, what's not working? Consistency isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what works. You got that? It's not about doing everything. It's about doing the things that work. And if we can do the things that work, then we enhance our ability to be resilient and to keep going, because we're seeing benefits. We're seeing those milestones. We're seeing that thing is aligned with our why, with our North Star statement, as we talked about last episode. And the things that aren't in that direction, we need to get rid of. So what strengthens you, right? So what strategies have you done that strengthens you and helps you to stay consistent? Those are the ones that we want to enhance. Those are the ones that we want to keep going. Those are the ones we want to keep building. And the ones where it's not doing that, then those are the ones that we want to take off of our list, okay? What habits or routines do we need to adjust? And this allows you to list them, and we'll talk about our challenge here in a little bit. You want to list them, and then we're going to make some changes to them, okay? Let's see. And then how have you grown mentally, physically, and emotionally? There they are. There they are. Are you stronger? Are you more flexible? Are you calmer? All right, we'll come to that in a minute. All right. So physically, what has happened? What has happened to you? What is your weight like? Have you been doing some things that are helping you with your weight loss, if that was your goal? Are you more toned, more cut? Right? We'll come and address some of that coming up in a little while. Not today, but in another episode. But do you look the way you want? Are you able to fit into that dress, into that suit, into that whatever? Right? So those are important things to look. What do we look like physically? And then mentally. So the goal of the exercise, the walking, the rowing, the elliptical, whatever exercise you're doing, whatever movement you're doing, the goal of that was to improve the physical. So to help you burning energy, help you be more relaxed, more flexible, all of that. But the mindset that we've been learning, the goal of that was to help you to change, to get a growth mindset, to improve, to get mental resilience. And so how have you changed mentally? How has your thought process changed? Remember, limitless living says that we are not allowing anything from inside of us or outside of us to hinder us. So that inside of us has to do with our thought process, has to do with our mind and the way we see the world. Because your interpretation of the world and the perspective that you have is very important in how you show up. And so how has that changed over the last 72, 73 days? What have you been learning? How has your mind changed? How has your mindset changed? And there are some things that even now you are thinking about that are different, and you see them in a different way than you did before. And so how has that changed? You want to reflect, you want to solidify, you want to enhance the places where you are getting benefit, the places where those things are working. And are there places that I still need to continue moving forward with? Are there still concepts or ideas or pieces of interpretation or beliefs that I hold that are not serving me? And if they're not, how do I improve that? Right? So you want to ask yourself, are you more disciplined? Are you more disciplined? Are you managing stress better? I think I'm managing stress better from this series. I think I am. Well, let me go back and let's talk about my discipline. So I'm more disciplined because I've had to be, right? So I've had to change my calendar, my schedule. I've had to say, for example, one of the things that I had to realize was that I had to exercise if I was going to do this 100-day walk to consistency and videotape. I had to do it during the daytime, right? Or be in the space that has light. So exercising for me, I could have gotten up at midnight and worked out and did something that was exercise. But if I was going to do this 100 days, I had to do it during the light time so that I have light for the video. And so I had to order myself. I had to become more disciplined to say to myself that I've got to create space for that. Otherwise, it would not have happened. Okay? And so I realized that I forgot which video it was that we did when it was just becoming dark. And I said, okay, yeah, this is okay. But if I'm going to truly do this, I've got to do it at a time, which is why you see, I do it in the morning when it's light. Mostly I do it at lunch. Sometimes I'll do it after work. And then, of course, those times when the weather was bad, we did the elliptical. But I couldn't just do it at any time arbitrarily. It had to be time when I had the conditions that I needed. And so you may find that you were more disciplined. So are you more disciplined? That's number one. And then number two, do you handle stress better? Well, the mindset changes that we've talked about, the ability to be resilient, the ability to bounce back requires that we create for ourselves a way of managing stress. Because the stress is not going to change. The stress doesn't change in most cases. And so if the stress is not going to change, then my ability to manage it has to change, right? And if that's the case, then I've got to develop, I've got to go searching, I've got to be intentional about what I do and how I manage stress. It won't just happen. Often I'll ask people who seem to be in some stress, I say, how are you managing the stress? They say, well, I'm just getting through it. Well, I don't even know what to say about that, right? Because you have to have a way of managing it. Getting through it may work right now, and it may actually work for a long time. But eventually, just getting through it is going to catch up. And when it catches up, the devastation that causes is beyond description when just getting through it catches up with us. Manage, right? We've got to learn to manage. So have you done that? Have you been using some of the strategies that we've been talking about to be more resilient and to set yourself up for the best consistency that you can? And then, are you feeling stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally? I am. And when you feel stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally, you show up differently. You show up more confidently. You show up, and remember, we talked about confidence, right? So I think I gave the example of a CEO who is tasked to run a company in an area that they have no experience in. And when they're hired, they're not hired because they have experience on that specific item. Now that helps, right? So don't get me wrong, that helps. But they're being hired because they have proven that they have the ability. And so our self-confidence doesn't have to come because we are an expert in a particular area. The self-confidence comes in the fact that I know that I am capable, that I'm sufficient, and I have problem-solving abilities. And I mentioned to you that, one of the things I'm teaching my son is problem solving, or in my office, problem solving. right? Because situations are going to come up that there's not a protocol for. There's not a procedure for that. We've never talked about that. We've never gone through that. But how do you get through that process? You have to have had the ability to problem solve. And so when you are feeling stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally, you show up in a space that's more confident. When you feel physically, mentally, and emotionally stronger, you're more resilient. So things that come at you, you don't have to be defensive about them. It simply is what it is. And here it comes, and I get to handle it. And I'm capable. I'm okay with that. Right? So when you're physically, mentally, and emotionally stronger, that resilience, the ability to bounce back is easier. When you are confident in your ability to succeed, knowing that, hey, I'm going to be good, then you're kinder. You give people the benefit of the doubt. You are able to talk more calmly. You're able to negotiate better. You're able to state your wishes better. You're able to talk about your preferences without feeling guilty. You're able to say no without feeling like you're letting the world down, right? So notice all those things come because we are physically, mentally, and emotionally stronger. So are you physically, mentally, and emotionally stronger? Because that's what we want. That's what we want to happen, right? So when we're reflecting, this is not just about, oh, what went wrong. It is, okay, what are the things I've learned about myself? What are the spaces that have grown? And I want you to, we'll talk about that in our challenge. You want to journal about those things, because that is part of the profound value and richness that comes from life. So life is not just about the work. It's not just about the car and the house, it's about, okay, what am I learning about myself? And look at who I've developed into, who I've created. Okay? All right, so how do we reflect and stay consistent for the rest of the journey? How do we reflect and stay consistent for the rest of the journey? So number one, we celebrate our progress, even the small things. And that's why I made a point about the challenges that sometimes we will experience, because those are points of celebration. Those are places where we should celebrate, even though they may have been small. We've done 73 days. All right, I'm not even walking past that yet. 73 days. Guess what? That's a point for celebration. Right? When we got to 50, that was a point for celebration. I celebrate every day that I am out here. I celebrate every video that we do. I celebrate every walk that I do, every conversation that I have. I celebrate every comment that comes through. I celebrate because it's a win. It's an indication that, first of all, I'm being consistent. It's an indication that there's value to the content that we have. So I celebrate that. And physically for me, and medically, right, metabolically, this has been great for me. When I go to my doctor and he says, hey, or when I step on that scale and the scale is lower, my blood sugars are better, my A1C is better. All of those things are points of celebration for me. So celebrate all the stuff. You've made it 73 days. Did you hear me? You've made it 73 days. Right? You didn't think you could do a week or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days. And here you are, 73 days in. Man, let's throw up some streamers. Let's celebrate. Let's jump up and down so much that people around you think you're crazy, because you're like, what's wrong with you? Man, I'm 73 days in. 73 days. That's a celebration right there. Right? So write down 3 things that you're proud of so far. What are 3 things that you're proud of? When I do my coaching, when I talk to my patients, I'll ask them, well, what is something you're proud of? What is something that's just been successful at? Okay? So write down three wins that you have, something that you're proud of so far. And then identify one area of improvement. Now we've looked back at all of the We've looked back at all of the different places where the procedures we've been doing. What are places that we need to make some improvement, right? Because you've identified those. We said, what are things that are winning, things that are working, what are things that are not working? Okay, so what do we need to make a change of? Nobody's perfect. Yep, I'm pausing. Nobody's perfect. And if you think you're perfect, then that right there is a place where we need to change. We need to address. Right? So nobody's perfect. And it's okay to not be perfect. In fact, not being perfect is part of the human condition. Right? We talked about that several episodes ago. It's part of the human condition. And it's okay. But what we want to do is we want to use that, and we want to propel ourselves into a better position for success. Yeah. So identify one area of improvement. What's one thing you can do to change? And then set a new intention for the next 10 days. Right? So a new intention for the next 10 days. What are we going to do? So we're going to make that change. We're going to make that adjustment. We're going to make that pivot. We're going to reevaluate that goal. And then we're going to set ourselves up for the next 10 days. What am I going to do differently? Okay? So clarity fuels consistency. So define the key focus for the next 10 days. We talked about clarity yesterday in our episode. So when you are clear, then you're able to bring energy, focus, direction to anything you do. So as you're thinking about the thing that you're going to change, right? What clearly define what it is that you're looking to change, and what is the benefit that you're going to get? What's the vision? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? Okay, awesome. So reflecting is very important, very, very important. And in our goal for 100 days, this is a perfect point to begin reflecting over the last 73 days that we've had as we move into the final stretches of our series. You want to be sure that you're getting the benefit, and you are learning from the things that you've done so far. You've done an awesome job of getting here. We've done an awesome job. I'm just going to say we've done an awesome job of getting here, and that is worth celebrating and worth reflecting, because there's a lot of stuff that we have learned. Well, I'm going to say it. Yep, I'm going to say this is one of my favorite talks, one of my favorite episodes, because once again, they're all keystone principles. And keystone principles are all important, and they all set us up for success. They all are the things on which our success rides. But we can't ever go without having a challenge. So go ahead and grab your journal. So this is our reflection challenge for day 73, reflection challenge. So number one, write down 3 wins from the last 73 days. All right, this goes back to what we just talked about in how to reflect and stay consistent. So write down 3 wins from the last 73 days. What are you most proud of? What are you most proud of? Identify one lesson you've learned and write that down. Journal about it. I want you to spend some time here with the lesson, right? Don't want you to just write it down and move on. I want you to write it down, and I want you to begin thinking about it. What does that mean? What does that mean if I had not learned this lesson? What does it mean now that I have learned this lesson? But ultimately, how does this change how I show up and what I do? Because remember, our interpretation of the world gives us a feeling, which gives us an emotion, which directs our behavior, and our actions directs our success. So don't just let it be a thought that happens. What does that mean now as am I reflecting? How does that change what I do, and how does that help set me up for the best possibility of success? And then what's something that you now know that you didn't know at the start? Right? What's something that you now know that was not there before? You didn't understand that, you didn't know it, and it is now a part of your being, part of your existence. Write that down. And then set one intention for the next 10 days. What am I going to do as I move through the next 10 days? Right? So this, great. Reflecting for success is a very important point. And as I said, this is one of my favorite conversations. We're here and we're moving. We are continuing to grow. Remember, consistency is your key. It is your superpower. It is the thing that helps you to remain on task, and it helps you to be successful. Without it, you're doing things, but the chances of success goes down. So make sure that you're being consistent. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Thank you for joining me for another episode of my 100-day walk to consistency. See you tomorrow as we dive into day number 74, y'all. I'll see you on the walk.